Hello and welcome to Daily News Simplified, the why, what and how of newspaper reading. Today we will discuss the articles displayed on the screen from the Delhi edition of The Hindu newspaper dated 3rd November 2018. So let's start. Now before starting today's discussion, let us take up a question from the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination, and which was also covered in the Daily News Simplified and the Focus magazine. So today we will take up this question which was related to a tussle between the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi and the elected government of Delhi. And the question asked whether the Supreme Court judgment of July 2018 can settle the political tussle between the Lieutenant Governor and the elected government of Delhi. So this becomes a part of the General Studies paper 2 under the topic Indian polity. Now this judgment of Supreme Court which was related to the governance of Delhi was covered in the Daily News Simplified of 5th July 2018. And if you look at the previous year questions, it was also asked in year 2016. And the question was related to the conflicts between the elected representatives and the institution of Lieutenant Governor in the administration of Delhi. Now, the issue of Delhi government versus the institution of Lieutenant Governor was also discussed in the Focus magazine of December, and it was also discussed in the Daily News Simplified of 5th July 2018. Now, before answering such question, you should know about the status of Delhi. So regarding Delhi, it is neither a state nor a union territory. This is because it was a union territory till the year 1991. However, after the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act, it was given a special status. And after that, it came to be formally known as the National Capital Territory of Delhi. And based on the 69th Constitutional Amendment Act, the Article 239AA was inserted in the Constitution. And this article provided that the Legislative Assembly of Delhi shall have the power to make laws on all the subjects enumerated in state list or in the concurrent list. However, the Legislative Assembly of Delhi cannot make laws on following entries under the state list. So it provided for exception on the legislative power of Delhi Assembly. And it provided that the Legislative Assembly of Delhi cannot make laws on first, public order, second, policing, and third was related to land. So a major aspect of the unique status of Delhi is that the government of Delhi does not enjoy all powers with respect to lawmaking which are enjoyed by other states. And you might be knowing that full-fledged states other than Delhi can make laws on public order, police and land as well. Further, this Article 239AA defines the powers of lieutenant governors. And the article says that there shall be a council of ministers and the chief minister at the head to aid and advise the lieutenant governor. And the chief minister will aid and advise the lieutenant governor in the exercise of his functions in relation to matters with respect to which legislative assembly has power to make laws. However, it provides for an exception. The exception is that the lieutenant governor can act in his own discretion at times. Further, the article provides that if there is any difference of opinion between the lieutenant governor and his ministers on any matter, the lieutenant governor shall refer it to the president, and the lieutenant governor will act according to the decision given by the president. So simply the Article 239AA provided that Delhi Legislative Assembly can make laws on state and concurrent list. However, it cannot make laws on three of the issues, and they were the public order, police and the land. Further, it provided with chief minister who will aid and advise the lieutenant governor. However, the lieutenant governor was provided with certain discretionary powers. And in case of any difference of opinion between the LG and the Council of Ministers, the LG could refer the matter to President, and he can act according to the decision given by the President. So he was not bound by the aid and advice of Council of Ministers in certain conditions. And the controversy between the elected representatives of Delhi and the institution of Lieutenant Governor started because of these discretionary clauses, which provided that in case of any difference of opinion between LG and ministers, the LG can refer that matter to President. Further, the controversy was also related to all these three matters. This is because Delhi was not a full-fledged state. And the elected representatives of Delhi demanded that Delhi should be accorded the status of a full state. Now, this contentious issue of administration of the NCT of Delhi was challenged in the High Court. And the High Court stated that the Lieutenant Governor is the administrative head of the national capital. Further, the High Court stated that Delhi continues to be a union territory rather than a full-fledged state. So the High Court's decision was that Delhi is not a full-fledged state and the LG remains as the administrative head of the national capital. Further, the High Court stated that the Lieutenant Governor enjoys discretionary powers as per the Constitution and has greater role to play in administration of national capital of Delhi. So the High Court of Delhi cleared that the LG was the head of the National Capital Territory and it was not the Chief Minister of Delhi. Further, the High Court provided that LG enjoys discretionary powers and he had greater role to play in the administration of National Capital Territory of Delhi. So this means that the power of the elected representatives was curbed or limited by this High Court's decision. However, the decision of High Court was challenged in Supreme Court. And the Supreme Court provided in its judgment that LG is bound by the aid and advice of Delhi government. It also provided for collaborative federalism. And the Supreme Court clarified the manner in which the administration of Delhi should be conducted. Now, the Supreme Court in July 2018 provided judgment on all these points. So, the Supreme Court clarified about the role of Lieutenant Governor in the administration of Delhi. It also talked about the impact of aid and advice of the Council of Ministers on the Lieutenant Governor. Further, it provided decision on the demand of statehood for Delhi. It also clarified the status of elected representatives of Delhi, and it also talked about the collaborative federalism in the administration of Delhi. So these were the 5 aspects of the judgment of Supreme Court of 2018. Now first let us look at the controversy based on which the judgment was given. Now the main pressure point was that the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi was under the impression that he had the authority to refer any matter to President for the consultation. Now due to this, the balance was in favor of centre because some of the decisions of Government of Delhi were blocked by the Lieutenant Governor. And we know that the Delhi High Court in its 2016 concurred with the view of LG. This means that the High Court's decision provided for primacy of Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. However, this was challenged by the elected representatives in Supreme Court. So the Supreme Court in its judgment clarified that an elected government of Delhi cannot be undermined by an unelected administrator, that is the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. Further, the Supreme Court has effectively restored the primary role played by the representative government in the National Capital Territory of Delhi. So this was basically the essence of the judgment of Supreme Court. Further, the Supreme Court talked about collaborative federalism and it provided that for the progress of a nation, both the central government, the Lieutenant Governor and the state government or the elected representatives of Delhi should work together. And the manner in which the elected representatives of Delhi and the Lieutenant Governor function should be with the intention to arrive at a solution for a problem. So the Supreme Court clarified that the union government and the state government should endeavor to address the common problems with the intention of arriving at a solution. Further, the Supreme Court directed that the union and the state government should express their readiness to achieve the common objective and work together for it. So simply the Supreme Court provided that to solve the tussle in the administration of National Capital Territory of Delhi, both the governments, that is the central and the state government, should work towards collaborative federalism. Further, the Supreme Court clarified about the role of Lieutenant Governor of Delhi. And under this, the Supreme Court said that the governance of Delhi cannot rest upon the whims of one functionary, that is the Lieutenant Governor. And he cannot refer every matter of Delhi government to the President, as provided in the Article 239A. Further, the Supreme Court cautioned the Lieutenant Governor against sending every trivial dispute with the government to the President. And it suggested that the Lieutenant Governor must work harmoniously with his ministers. Further, the Supreme Court advised that both Chief Minister of Delhi and the Lieutenant Governor of Delhi hold constitutional posts. And they should work in a collaborative manner and should fulfill the concept of collaborative federalism. Further, talking about the importance of the elected representatives of Delhi, the Supreme Court judgment said that it is the people who are sovereign, and the decisions of the elected government in Delhi represent the public will, perception, and popular sentiment. And we know that in a representative democracy, the will of the people is primary. Further, the Supreme Court observed that a well-deliberated legitimate decision of the Council of Ministers cannot be rejected by the negative attitude of Lieutenant Governor. This is because the Council of Ministers represents members which are elected by the people. So indirectly, the Council of Ministers is representing the public will, perception and popular sentiment. Further, the Supreme Court judgment observed that the negative attitude of Lieutenant Governor impacts the concept of collective responsibility. Further, the judgment observed that if the collective responsibility of the Council of Ministers is not given the expected weightage, there will be corrosion or demeaning of essential features of representative government or representative democracy. So simply the Supreme Court judgment provided that legitimate decisions of the Council of Ministers should not be rejected by a negative attitude of Lieutenant Governor. And the Lieutenant Governor should work with the Council of Ministers in a collaborative manner. Further, the Supreme Court judgment analyzed the status of aid and advice provided by the Council of Ministers to the Lieutenant Governor. And previously there was an issue that whatever aid and advice was given to Lieutenant Governor, he used to sit over that matter without taking any decision. So in this regard, the Supreme Court observed that the Lieutenant Governor has no independent decision-making power, and he has to either act on the advice or aid of Council of Ministers, or he is bound to implement the decision taken by the President on a reference being made by him. Further, in case of difference of opinion, the LG should straight away refer the dispute to the President for a final decision without sitting over it or stultifying the governance in national capital. So simply either he should take a decision on the aid and advice provided by the Council of Ministers, or he should refer that matter to the President straight away without wasting any time. This is because sitting over a decision and not taking a decision on any matter leads to pendency of decision, and it ultimately leads to policy paralysis. So in this regard, the Supreme Court has clarified that LG should either act on the aid and advice of Council of Ministers, or he should straight away refer the dispute to President for a final decision. So in this manner, the Supreme Court has tried to solve the issue of pendency or the policy paralysis in Delhi. Further, the Supreme Court also commented on the demand for statehood. And the Supreme Court in this regard did not agree with the demand of full statehood which was demanded by the government of Delhi. Thus, it means that critical powers like police, land and public order still remain vested with the centre. Further, the Supreme Court took reference of the 1987 Balakrishnan Committee and concluded that Delhi is not a state. So simply the Supreme Court has clarified and given directions on various contentious issues and directed the centre and state to work in a collaborative manner. However, it has not accepted the demand of full statehood for Delhi. Now, all the aspects of the controversy between the elected representatives of Delhi and the institution of Lieutenant Governor were covered in the August edition of Focus magazine, wherein it provided for the background of this issue. It highlighted the Constitution's 69th Amendment Act and also highlighted the Article 239 AA. This edition of Focus magazine also highlighted the recent judgment of the Supreme Court and the various aspects that were covered under this judgment. For example, it covered the status of aid and advice provided by the Council of Ministers to the Lieutenant Governor. It also talked about the role of Lieutenant Governor. And finally, it talked about the demand of statehood for the National Capital Territory of Delhi. Now, as the question reads, whether the Supreme Court judgment can settle the political tussle between the Lieutenant Governor and the elected government of Delhi, this required us to take a stand on this issue. So after elaborating all these aspects of the judgment, you could have taken a stand according to your understanding. Now with this, let us start our discussion for today's newspaper. This article on page number 11 is in news because the Reserve Bank of India has allowed banks to provide partial guarantee or partial credit enhancement to NBFC bonds. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 3 of the mains examination under the topic Economic Development. So by an order, the Reserve Bank of India has allowed the banks to provide partial credit enhancement to bonds issued by systematically important NBFCs and housing finance companies. Now, why has the RBI allowed for this partial credit enhancement? Now, we know that the NBFCs and the housing finance companies are required to pay back almost rupees 1.20 lakh crores. However, we know that the NBFCs and HFCs are facing liquidity crunch due to the default by the IL and FS. So this move by RBI to extend the partial credit enhancement to NBFCs and HFCs will enable these companies to raise funds or loans. So simply we should know that the NBFCs and HFCs are required to pay back loans. However, due to the liquidity crunch, these have not been able to raise funds. So by allowing the banks to extend partial credit enhancement to NBFCs, these companies will be able to raise funds in the market. Now we know that the NBFCs want to raise funds for the repayment of their debt, and they are trying to raise these funds through bonds. So simply corporates or NBFCs etc. can raise capital through the issuance of bonds. Now these bonds have a rating, and the ratings of such bonds is low because of the default by IL and FS and due to the liquidity crunch in the market. So this is precisely the reason why the RBI has provided the partial credit enhancement. Now, as these NBFCs are trying to raise capital through the issuance of bond, guarantee on the repayment of such bonds may be given by other entity, and this refers to the credit enhancement. And the other entity here refers to the banks, because the banks are providing partial credit enhancement on such bonds which are used by NBFCs to raise capital or funds. Now, what does this guarantee do? So this leads to improvement in the credit rating of a bond. And we know that the bonds of NBFCs are relatively low rated because of the default of IL and FS and the liquidity crunch in the market. Now, for example, if a bond which has been issued by a corporate or an NBFC is rated BBB, its rating can be improved to AAA by the use of credit enhancement facility. And regarding the guarantee on repayment, you should understand that if the NBFCs fail to repay the debt that they have raised through the issuance of bonds, banks will ensure that such debts are paid back. So simply the bank will take care of such debts in case of failure to repay the debt. However, the RBI in its recent order has provided for certain limits on such repayment ability of the banks. Now let us look at the RBI's guidelines on partial credit enhancement for NBFCs and HFCs. So now the RBI has allowed banks to provide credit enhancement up to 20% of the total bond issue of NBFCs and HFCs in India. Now, for example, if an NBFC is raising 100 crores through the issuance of a bond, the banks can assure the repayment of dues up to 20% of the value of the bond. So in this case, the banks can assure the repayment of dues up to rupees 20 crores. Further, the RBI guidelines say that the tenure of these bonds shall not be less than 3 years, and the proceeds from the bonds shall only be utilized to refinance the existing debt. So these are the two conditions that the RBI has provided for. Further, the RBI guidelines say that the exposure of a bank by the way of a partial credit enhancement to bonds issued by each such NBFCs shall be restricted to 1% of the capital funds of the bank. So what this means is that, for example, if a bank's capital is about 100 crore rupees, so it can provide the partial credit enhancement facility for only an amount of rupees 1 crore, that is 1% of the capital funds of the bank. So these are the important guidelines provided by the RBI on partial credit enhancement for NBFCs and HFCs. Now, after going through this article, you should try and answer this question from your preliminary examination point of view and put the answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 1 is in news because the government has announced various measures to stimulate the micro, small and medium enterprises sector of Indian economy. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 3 under the topic Economic Development. Now MSME is an important topic for our mains examination from General Studies paper 3 point of view. And to understand the various aspects of MSMEs, you should go through the class 11th NCERT of Business Studies. And under this you should read the chapter 9 which is related to small businesses. Now this chapter of the NCERT throws light on the definitions of various micro, small and medium enterprises. This chapter further throws light on the role of small businesses in India. The chapter also highlights the role of small businesses in rural India. Further, this chapter throws light on the various problems faced by the MSME sector. For example, the problems related to finance, managerial skills, labor, raw materials and marketing. So you should try and understand the various aspects of MSMEs from this chapter of NCERT. However, now we will look into the various steps taken by the Government of India to boost the MSME sector. And the link for this chapter will also be provided in today's PDFs so that you can go through this chapter to enhance your understanding of MSME sector. Now, in order to give a boost to the MSME sector, the Government of India has announced 12 measures for their growth, expansion and facilitation of MSME sector. And by these measures, the government has tried to solve 5 problems of the MSME sector. And these include the access to credit, access to market, technology upgradation, ease of doing business, and security of the employees who are employed in the MSME sector. So simply the government has taken 12 measures to address these key issues which are faced by MSME sector. For easing out the access to credit, the government has started a portal which will grant loans up to rupees 1 crore in 59 minutes. So this is with the purpose of providing ease for accessing the credit by the MSMEs. Further, the government has started 2% interest subvention on fresh or incremental loans and interest rebate from 3 to 5% on older loans. And regarding interest subvention, you should understand that if a normal business enterprise is taking loan at the rate of 8% from the market, the MSMEs will now get the loan for only 6% from the market rate. This is because the 2% interest has been taken care of by the government. In order to ease the access of markets for these MSME sectors, the government has now made it compulsory for the public sector companies to procure 25% instead of the previous 20% of their total purchases from MSMEs. And out of this 25% procurement, 3% must now be procured from women entrepreneurs or MSMEs which are being handled by women entrepreneurs. Further, all PSUs of the union government must now compulsorily be a part of the government's e-market portal. and this will provide a common marketplace for these MSMEs. Now, regarding the steps taken for ease of doing business, the government has decided that clusters will be formed for pharmaceutical related MSMEs, and 70% cost of establishing these clusters will be borne by the union government. Further, the simplification of labor laws will be undertaken. Further, there is a provision of regular inspection which will be decided through computerized random allotment. Further, an ordinance has been brought under which, for minor violations under Companies Act, the entrepreneurs will no longer have to approach courts, and they can correct their violations through simple procedures. And this will help in easing the business for MSME sectors. And the employees of the MSME sector will be provided social security by providing them Jan Dhan accounts, provident fund and insurance. Now, all these points are pretty self-explanatory in nature. So you should go through all these points which have also been provided in the PDF which is attached to this video. Now, after going through this article, you should try and answer this question from your preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 1 reads that India will get waiver from the sanctions of United States and can now import oil from Iran. Further, United States has provided waiver to 8 nations who can now import oil from Iran. So this will form a part of the General Studies paper 2 of the mains examination under the topic International Relations. Now, this is in news because India and 8 other nations have been granted waiver from the US sanction against purchase of Iranian oil. So now these 8 nations can import oil from Iran. However, the European Union, the United Kingdom and the company SWIFT among several others have not been granted a waiver. Now, in this, the mechanism used by SWIFT is very important for us from exam point of view. And this company SWIFT is very critical for making payments to Iran in case of imports of oil. So let us understand the issue of SWIFT. So now let us understand what is the significance of not granting SWIFT a waiver against UN sanctions. Now, SWIFT is a financial network that provides high value cross-border transfers for its members. And it connects over 11,000 financial institutions in more than 200 countries and territories. So simply, it is a financial network that provides for high-value transactions or transfers across borders. Now, this SWIFT system has become a hegemonic means of transferring money. It means that SWIFT is dominating the mechanism of transferring money across borders, and especially those transactions which involve high amount or high value from one country to another country or one financial system to another. Now, if the SWIFT financial network continues to engage with the Iranian financial system, it can have sanctions imposed by the United States. And because of this threat of sanctions by the United States, SWIFT will cease financial transactions with Iranian financial systems. However, one important issue is that this would seize the ability of several countries, including India, to conduct high-value financial transactions with Iran. And you should know that this financial network is required by countries like India to pay for its imports from Iran. However, if sanctions are imposed on SWIFT financial network, India will not be able to pay for its imports from Iran. And to overcome this, Iran will have to form a separate financial transaction method with each country, which is impossible to do right now. For example, Iran is transacting with 80 countries. It will have to devise a separate financial transaction method for all these 80 countries. And this will make it impossible for Iran to create such a huge financial transaction method. And by posing sanctions on the SWIFT financial network, the US is trying to isolate Iran from the global financial system. So hopefully until now you have understood that SWIFT is a financial network which involves high value and high amount of cross-border transactions of financial transactions. Further, it has become the dominant means of transferring money from one banking system to another banking system or one financial system to another financial system. And presently, SWIFT is engaging with the Iranian financial system. However, under the threat of US sanctions, the SWIFT will cease to operate with Iranian financial system. And this will restrict the ability of various countries, including India, to have high-value financial transactions with Iran. And in such a case, Iran would have to devise a separate financial transaction method with each country. And thus, by imposing sanctions on SWIFT financial network, US is trying to isolate Iran from the global financial system. Now, as we know that the European countries and EU have not been provided waiver from the US sanctions, these countries and the EU are considering setting up of a special purpose vehicle to process Iran's import and export payments. However, the details of special purpose vehicle have not been released till now. So this is a news in transaction and let us wait for the story to unfold further. Now, after going through this news article, you should try and answer these questions from your preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 18 is in news because the NASA's historic Dawn mission has come to an end. So, this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Science. So, let us try and understand some key facts related to this Dawn mission of NASA. Now, this is in news because the NASA's Dawn spacecraft has run out of fuel. And this spacecraft is famous because it has helped in the exploration of two of the largest objects in the asteroid belt. Further, you should know that recently the Kepler Space Telescope has also run out of fuel. And you should know that the Kepler telescope was used for discovering exoplanets or planets outside our solar system. Further, regarding Dawn, you should know that it was launched in the year 2007. And it was launched with the mission to study Vesta and Cirrus, which are the two largest objects in the asteroid belt. And you should know that the asteroid belt is located between Jupiter and Mars. And this asteroid belt contains large number of rocky objects which are left over from the dawn of the solar system or the origin of the solar system. And this is how the mission was named as Dawn mission. This is because it studied objects of the asteroid belt which were created during the dawn of solar system. So these are few facts related to the Dawn mission of NASA which are important for us from preliminary examination point of view. Now, after going through this article, you should try and answer this question from your preliminary examination point of view and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. Now, this article on page number 7 talks about the green crackers. So, this will form a part of the preliminary examination syllabus under the topic General Issues on Environment. Now, the green crackers are in news because recently Supreme Court has imposed a partial ban on the firecrackers. And it has directed the center and the state governments to promote the use of green crackers. And it was discussed in the Daily News Simplified of 24th October 2018 by Basava sir in detail. And in this DNS, the details of the green crackers was also discussed. So you should go through this video to understand the basics of green crackers from your preliminary examination point of view. And from preliminary examination point of view, you should try and answer this question and put your answer in the comment section. With this, let us move on to the next article. With this, we have come to the end of today's discussion. Now let us move on to the question for the day.